Right, next up, Star Trek. Right, where are we? Why are we down there? I don't know. Star Trek Strange New Worlds co-showrunner says, don't feel like we're destroying your childhood. Henry Alonso Myers teases Kirk, comedy, space battles, and more. Now, I've got to say, before we start, I've seen the first 2 episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and I have to admit, I really like them. I know it's not a popular opinion in the circles that the YouTube channels that I watch. People like Doomcock and Robert My Burnett and Heel vs. Babyface and Gary at Nerdrotic, they all do not like Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And Kurtzman Trek in particular. And I don't like Kurtzman Trek. I didn't like Picard. Don't like Discovery. But Strange New Worlds, it's got me. I'm sorry, it just has. I'm enjoying it. I didn't think I would. I thought it'd be just the same as all the others, but so far, I'm only 2 episodes in. It might all go downhill, but so far, I'm enjoying it. It's not great. I'm not saying it's brilliant. I'm not saying it's the best Star Trek ever. I'm just saying I'm enjoying it, and it's okay. There's things in it that rankle me slightly. The rooms on the Enterprise, they're all massive. And there's some other little things, In the second episode, there's a scene at the beginning where the captain's holding like a dinner party, and I didn't like that. I didn't like how they did that. That didn't feel very Starfleet. It felt very Discovery. But anyway, apart from that, I'm enjoying it. And there's some lines that are used that I think they're like 20th and 21st century dialogue. They wouldn't say that, that far in the future. Such as keeping your foot on the gas. They wouldn't say that in the 23rd century. Well, I don't think they would. Right, Star Trek Strange New Worlds is here, and it's telling the continuing mission of the Starship Enterprise, only this time that storage vessel is under the command of Captain Christopher Pike in a time period before James T. Kirk was a captain. Well, I don't know, because we saw him in that picture from season 2, and he's got captain stripes on his tunic. But we'll see what happens. But don't worry, we'll get to that guy later in this article. Co-showrunner Henry Alonso Myers recently spoke with IGN about the approach to the show that he and his fellow writers and producers are taking, a distinctly standalone story style that tells new adventures each week, even while evolving the characters over the course of the season. I've got to admit, in season 2, in episode 2, it actually begins with that previously on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And I thought, why are they doing it previously? If each episode's a standalone episode, why are they doing it previously? They didn't need to do that. And also, they don't have an episode title. I know each episode's got a title, but it should come on the screen, the title of the episode. After the credits have rolled, it should come on, episode title. And they still don't do that, which, it's a little thing, but, I'd like to see that. Read on for more on that, plus the upcoming comedy episode, a heavy space battle episode, and how Paul Wesley's Kirk could fit into things. That's actually quite a cool space battle in episode 2. And the one thing I loved, it actually made me all giddy, the Enterprise fired its phasers, and it was a phaser beam, a big red beam that came out of the Enterprise and went, and I thought, yay, thank God for that. It wanted like a phaser pulse that we keep seeing, and they keep doing it with a proper phaser beam. Oh, yes. Right. What if Gene Roddenberry were making Star Trek today? Well, he ain't, but anyway. One of the most appealing aspects of Strange New Worlds is the way the show is leaning into its ensemble cast. In the debut episode alone, in addition to the series leads Anson Mount, Captain Pike, and Ethan Peck, Spock, get plenty to chew on. Characters like Jess Busher's Nurse Chapel, I'm still undecided on her. Christine Chong's Laan Noonien Singh, who I really like, and Celia Rose Gooding's Cadet Uhura, who's okay. Pardon me, all have moments to shine. And that continues for all the cast throughout the first 5 episodes of the show. Let's have another swig of pop. Press have previewed episodes 1 to 5 at the time of writing, but not me, because I'm not press. I'm just a fat Yorkshireman with a microphone. With just about every character getting a storyline of their own at some point. Episode 2 is Uhura's storyline, by the way. Uhura's episode. Of course, that was never quite the case in the past for the original series characters like Uhura, who was typically relegated to the oft-quoted hailing frequencies open type dialogue and not much more. For Alonzo Myers, he understands that it's just sort of the way that they did TV back then, but he also credits Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry for being revolutionary in how he depicted diversity in the 1960s. How we looked at our show was, well, what if Gene Roddenberry were making it today? Alonzo Myers tells IGN, those values are still the same. We want to be true to those values, but I think those values probably look different in 2022 than they did in the 1960s. He also points out that audiences are more sophisticated about character development than they were decades ago. And there's some pictures if you want to look at them. We all love the big ideas that came out of those shows, but we're trying to also mind meld even, with a contemporary understanding of character, says the showrunner. I think it would be an egregious mistake not to go into the mind of Uhura or Chapel, see mind meld. Take Uhura, who was in all 3 seasons of the original show, the animated series, and the first 6 movies, and yet we don't know all that much about her life based on those stories. Alonzo Myers saw Strange New Worlds as a unique opportunity to explore that. I think contemporary audiences would ask that question, he says. Like, what's your family like? How did she join Enterprise? Why put a young Uhura on the Enterprise if you're not going to explore these ideas? This episode 2, which is called something about a comet. Children of the Comet, it's called. It's about Uhura. Well, Uhura's the focus of the characters, and we learn that she's had. We learn about her family and that she's from Kenya. That she can speak 37 languages, but 22 of those are local, Kenyan languages. What else? We learn she's got a brother, and the grandma was in Starfleet, and that she's not sure that she wants to stay in Starfleet. So it reminded me of the early episodes of Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise, with Hoshi Sato. She was a communications officer. She wasn't sure if she wanted to be in Starfleet. She was scared all the time, wasn't she? And I think they're doing that with Uhura. So make of that as you will. Are they just stealing ideas from earlier Trek, or are they just, recycling? Because there's other things in it as well, the episode that borrow from other Trek episodes. Right, Alonzo Myers references one of the greatest Star Trek episodes ever as an example of how TV storytelling has changed over the years. The City on the Edge of Forever. Kirk loses the love of his life. I wouldn't call her that. And then the next episode, he's fine, he laughs. I don't think modern audiences would accept that in the same way we did back then. So we're sort of like, alright, we're going to do episodic stories, but the character arcs are continuous. Like if he loses the love of his life one episode, he's going to be having a little bit of a hard time in the next episode. And sometimes what ends up happening is that informs how we tell those episodic stories. And that's the fun of doing this kind of show. We don't want it to be so serialised that a person can't just come in and enjoy any given episode. I love how you could watch Next Gen, really any episode. You'll be like, does Riker have a beard or not have a beard? Well, yeah, he does have to. From season 2 onwards, he's got a beard, hasn't he? And you kind of know where you're at. We want the show to work like that. Indeed, in terms of servicing the entire Strange New Worlds ensemble, the showrunner says that they're straight up borrowed from The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine when giving characters their own episodes. I think it made the series stronger, he says. Episodes like The Next Generation's Data's Day, great episode, or Face of the Enemy, okay episode. It's what makes a show feel more unique. I've worked on a bunch of genre shows. There are only so many genre stories that you run into. You tell them over and over again. I've worked on so many body-switching episodes, but the thing that makes it unique and interesting is not the attempt to not do those stories, but it's the attempt to do those stories through these new characters. Speaking of which, Trek can be funny. Yes, we do get a body swap episode in the first half of this season, but not just that. We get a comedic body swap episode called Spock Amok. Oh, God. The hour harkens back to the days of the original series and some of the sequel shows when it was okay to go over a full comedy episode of Star Trek. The experience of doing the specifics of a body swap with Spock and T'Pring makes it unique, he says. We haven't seen that before. And in particular, the experience of doing it with Ethan Peck's Spock and Gia Sandu's T'Pring are what makes it unique and interesting. Not looking forward to that episode. Alonzo Myers confirms that the intention was definitely for Spock Amok to be a romantic comedy kind of episode. The interesting thing about the segment is that, as fun as it is, the various subplots going on in the episode all tie into each other thematically. It's very much an episode about learning to understand the other person's point of view, he says. Spock experiences it in a very specific way, Pike experiences it in a very specific way, and Una and La'an experience it in a very specific way, all of which are very different. The showrunner says that the hill I decided to die on was to say Trek can be funny. He cites a variety of beloved Star Trek comedy episodes, from The Trouble with Tribbles to its sequel, Trials and Tribulations, to DS9's Looking for Pa Mac in All the Wrong Places, and Little Green Men. And don't forget Q-Pid in Next Generation. It's not a crazy stretch to say that Trek can be funny, and Captain's Holiday as well, that was a bit of a comedy one, wasn't it? It's not a crazy stretch to say that Trek can be funny, says Alonzo Myers. It is canonically funny many times. It can handle that tone. We have an incredibly talented cast who are also very funny. So it was really important to me that we do an episode that tried for funny, but it's an hour long and there's always a moment where funny doesn't sustain it and you need it to be about something. So I would call it like a dramedy. We have that tone in it, and I think it feels like Star Trek to me. I loved writing that, and I will tell you there is no funnier human being than Anson Mount. He's got really good comic timing. God, this article's long. How long's it going for? Good heavens above. Oh, well, we'll plod on. The episode was also designed to be something of a reprieve from the previous one, Memento Mori, which is an intense space battle affair. Oh. Look, Spock Amok was coming after episode 4, which is hard-charging, heavy straight. He says 4 is a submarine movie. So it's going to be like what they call it? Balance of Terror. It's going to be like that, isn't it? Or Star Trek 2. Anyway, 4 is one of my favourites. One of the episodes that I was like, we've got to do this kind of episode. When I came into the show, it was kind of like the original series, Balance of Terror meets TNG's Disaster, really. But those are just fantastic, and it shows the whole crew working together. One would think that one of the trickier parts of making Star Trek Strange New Worlds is figuring out how to weave these stories into the existing franchise canon, since the adventures of Captain Pike and his crew take place less than a decade before the original series. But Alonzo Myers doesn't quite see things that way. Well, we'll see what he says, and then I'll give my opinion. We're doing a show that's set right now, he says, so we have to make it about something, and that means not being afraid to. It's when you get afraid that you might break the pieces that you stop doing interesting stories. I still think they're going to redo the original series. They're going to remake the original series in the image of Kurtzman Trek, in the image of Strange New Worlds and Discovery. They're going to not redo it all, but you know what I mean. Do a reimagining of the original series with this new Captain Kirk. That's what I think they're going to do. Anyway, that includes being willing to include classic characters like Uhura or Chapel, or just figuring out what makes Captain Pike different from other captains of the Enterprise past and present. We had endless discussions about how he's different from Kirk, he says. When we were talking with production designer Jonathan Lee about the designs for Pike's quarters, his massive quarters, we were like, how can we make Pike's quarters be emblematic of his style of leadership with his open fire? Not open fire, pew pew. I mean, he's got an open fireplace in his quarters. You think, crying out loud. Where were we? And how is he a different leader from all these other people? We sort of had this notion that, like, okay, maybe he's a guy who holds dinner parties. He's a guy who cooks. Why is he a guy who cooks? But it's the kind of dinner party where you come in and he hands you a glass of wine and says, here, cook this, I need help with this, and he involves everyone in it. He's nothing like the Jeff Hunter Pike, is he? Nothing at all. But I still enjoy the episodes. This gets to the idea of what kind of leader Pike is. Gentle, respectful, but has high expectations and tries to set you up to do your best, says Alonzo Myers. By the way, he's got over his not being used to having a woman on the bridge, hasn't he? There's lots of women on the bridge now. Anyway, whatever. When it comes to the other characters who are legacy characters, we really didn't want to tell the stories of the future, he continues. One of the things that we always are aware of, and we get notes that say, well, in the future Spock does this. So should he be doing this now? And we're like, yes, because he's doing this now, and we want to leave room for him in the future. Like maybe we're going to blow some stuff up. I don't know what I'm talking about. All that said, the writing team clearly are aware of the end point for this incarnation of the Enterprise. James T. Kirk will take command of the ship eventually, I think at the end of Season 2. Pike will leave, presumably to have his accident, and Bones, Scotty and the rest will take their positions on board as well. Citing Spock as an example, Alonzo Myers says, we're not trying to say he becomes a different Spock than the Spock everyone comes to know. We're just trying to tell an interesting story about the journey to get there. Our goal right now is just to do a bunch of good episodes and do it again and do it again. We want to explore what Trek can do through genres to tell interesting stories that we haven't told before about the people on the Enterprise, to show them in a different light. Sometimes in those moments where it might feel like we're blowing up something, it's always with a purpose. I promise you, we will find ways to come back to the things that you know and trust. I don't feel like we're destroying your childhood. And then, of course, there's the looming presence of James T. Kirk, who we know will be appearing in Season 2. The showrunner isn't worried about the iconic character upsetting the balance of the show once he arrives. The show is always about our core characters, he says. We have guest stars and interesting people who come in. These people will be memorable and curious, and sometimes they have big arcs, and sometimes they have small arcs. But they inevitably reflect on our characters in interesting ways. And Kirk is no different, except Kirk is a little bit more important in the canon, so he belongs in our world, but we're also trying to do the same thing with him that we do with the other people. But this is not the Kirk that you know, this younger Kirk. I guess he's been explored, some in the Kelvin Universe movies, but in a very different way. We aren't rewriting the past of these people. We are trying to imagine it in a new way. Paul Wesley's not doing a William Shatner imitation. There we go. Yeah, it's not an imitation because they're going to reimagine the original series. That's what I think they're going to do. But I am enjoying it so far, but we're only 2 episodes in and there's time for it to all go to hell.